Welcome to Whiteside's Workshop. Today on Whiteside's Workshop, we're going to take apart a Getrag F23 transmission commonly found in Chevy Cobalts that they use for circle track racing. And we're going to be installing a block type limited slip differential like this. This one's from BK Racing, bkracing.com. It acts just like a full-size limited slip in a stock differential. To take the transmission apart, you need 3 or 4 basic things. One of them is a clutch tool that holds the clutch input shaft steady while you undo the gear or the bearing retainer bolt from the transmission. I made this just out of an old clutch center and a piece of metal welded together. You need a 10 millimeter socket or 10 millimeter Allen head. You need a 10 millimeter Allen head. You need an E12 Torx bit, female. It gets all the bolts out of the transmission. And this is a T30 Torx bit to take the clutch throwout bearing out. So throwout bearing, we replace the throwout bearing whenever we do a clutch, but I like to keep old ones around because it's best to keep it in the transmission during storage. Now we got to get this cap off of here. This cap covers up the shaft bearing retainer that has to be taken off. Knock a hole in one side, don't go too deep. You don't want to interfere with the bearing thrust. You can screw a wood screw in here or a sheet metal screw and then pry on it. It's easier if you have a puller like this. Comes right out with a puller like that. This is your bearing retainer nut or bolt. That's got to come out. To get that out, you put your clutch input shaft tool in there so that the input shaft can't turn. The transmission has to be in gear. This has Loctite on it, so it's difficult to get out sometimes. Once that's out, take your bearing retainer tool off, and now you take the bolts out that hold the 2 halves of the transmission together. That's where you use your E12 bit. There's a couple of pins, line-up pins at both ends of the transmission case. Sometimes those are a little sticky. This end here seems to be coming up okay. Also, the shaft, that shaft right there is in that bearing. Sometimes you have to tap down on that shaft while you're prying up on the... That's all there is to it. That's how the transmission comes apart. Now we've got the transmission apart. All we need to do is pick this out of here. Pick the differential out of here. inspect everything, make sure everything's okay inside the transmission, nothing's broke. This bearing, sometimes you take this bearing off because this gear here is underneath of it. Make sure when you reinstall that bearing that you reinstall it with this black ring up. Not like this. If you install it like that, you'll never get the case tightened up. So the black ring towards the inside of the bearings is you want to mount that up when you're putting the transmission back together. Now we're going to take the differential apart and machine the gears to fit. Alright, we got to take these gears out. These two gears don't have to come out, but they come out anyways. These two gears are the axle gears. These have to be machined flat, and there's a clearance call out between the blocks and these two gears. You take these out by taking this pin out. This pin has a retainer, a snap ring retainer right here that holds it in. It's on either end, it doesn't matter. But you got to take that retainer ring off, that snap ring retainer off, to get this pin out. When that pin comes out, then you can turn the whole thing and the two axle gears will come out. Just be careful because behind these gears is a flat metal bearing plate. So let's see if we can get that retainer ring off. It helps to have a set of these flat retainer ring pliers. You can get it off without it by using a couple punches, but it's easier with the retaining ring pliers. Pop the retaining ring off. When you do that, when you pop the retaining ring off, that shaft will drop right out. When that shaft drops out, you turn it 90 degrees and these two gears come out. These are the spider gears. Now the two axle gears will come out. And behind the two axle gears are these bearings, these flat steel shims that act as a bearing between the gear and the housing. These are the axle gears, and this is the surface we're going to be grinding right here to make it flat. We're going to grind it to make it flat so the sides of this block can ride up against there. Start by just smoothing it down so it's just about even with the edge of the gears. I'm doing this on a lathe, but you can do it on a bench. Lay them flat on a bench and grind them with a grinder. Just be careful that you don't dig into any one side more than the other. Let's go try them. Okay. Don't forget to put the shims back on the back side of them. clean them up. The gear drops right down into a groove. See, that's just about right. The blocks slide in by hand pretty good, but they're still a little bit tight. You want a little bit of clearance. Around 5 thousandths or so of clearance. You can check it with a feeler gauge. We'll do that later. But it's close. So I got to take just a little bit more off the gears. There we go. Yeah. And we can get a shim in here, about a 4,000 shim in here, but a 6,000 doesn't fit. That's pretty good. Don't forget, you got to take these blocks out. Take these blocks off on both sides. And the pins pull out before you put it back in the car. That's important, otherwise it's not going to work and these are going to come flying out and things are going to get really ugly. So these blocks and pins got to come out. Hang on to them for later in case you want to take it back out again, but they got to come out before installation. And this clip's got to come back on. I got to do that. There, it clips on. It's in the groove all the way around. We got to pop these off. We got to get a screwdriver behind there and work them out. And once they do come off, they can fly across the room. So be careful. Oh, you don't lose it. Caught that one. My shirt. So now those are out, this is installed, this is ready to go back in the transmission. Right, we're going to put our differential back in. And while we're here, I want to check on one more thing. If you want to know what ratio you have F23 or any transmission like this, you count the number of teeth on this gear and the number of teeth on this gear. And you divide this number by this number, and that's your final drive ratio. Just like they were in a regular rear-wheel drive car, that'll be your final drive, or your differential ratio will be the ratio between this gear and this gear. This one happens to be a 441 transmission, which comes out of a Saturn Vue. This is 75 and 17. So that comes out to 4.41. That's the ratio of this transmission. Don't forget your bearing, and the bearing has to go on like that. Not that side has to go down, and that side has to go up, just like that. Now if that's like that, now I got to clean up and get ready for reassembly. There's a sealer, some sort of sealer, clear sealer on these two halves of the transmission. You just want to clean off any loose stuff and make sure that it's in good shape and get any grease or oil that's dripped out on there off. Take your bearing out, or your, take your magnet out and clean your magnet. The magnet is covered in crap from the transmission over the years. So just give it a good wipe down, put it back in. That way it's ready to collect some more. Make sure it goes all the way back down in the groove in the transmission housing. Make sure these surfaces are relatively clean on both halves. This half also. I put a gasket maker on here. You can use silicone if you want. Use it very sparingly. Put a very, very, very small bead of silicone on it and maybe rub it out flat. You don't want a lot. I use Loctite gasket maker 515 or 518 from Loctite. This is an anaerobic seal gasket maker, and it's for mating metal surfaces. Then it's ready to go back together. When you put the top back on, just be careful how it fits on there. It should slide down and relatively easily slide down over the gears. If it doesn't go on, there's an issue. Sometimes it's the shift forks, and sometimes it's just the bearing is not lined up. There's a shift fork over here that's not lined up. Once we push that shift fork over into alignment, it drops right on. You're pounding it down, tapping down on it. You're tapping down on it, and it's going over top of this bearing right here, or inside of that bearing, I should say. It's going inside that bearing, so you got to kind of tap on it to bring it down, and then put your bolts back in it. If it doesn't lay flat, something's not right. Make sure you got that bearing on right, there's nothing interfering, because it should lay right back down there flat. Okay, all the bolts are back in it. Now we can flip it around. Put our bearing bolt back in. Before we put the bearing bolt, or I'm sorry, after you put the bearing bolt, where you put the bearing bolt back in. Put some thread locker on the bearing bolt before you put it back in. Tighten it up. Don't forget this. This is your oil flinger. This goes back in here like that, underneath this cap. There's a couple ways to do this cap. You could gob some silicone. You can gob some silicone in that hole that you made and put it back in. But I prefer caps. I have caps in stock here. I get new caps. I have these caps available for sale too if you want one. I install these caps dry. They have a rubber around the outside edge, so I put them in dry. Nothing around them. Put it in there. I like to go a little below flush, just a touch. There's kind of a chamfer in there. I go to the bottom edge of that chamfer with a cover, with a cap. Make sure everything turns. Got your gears all working order still, everything works. And put your clutch back on, either a new throwout bearing or the old throwout bearing on for storage. And also when you're taking this transmission out and putting it in, always make sure these are clean. You get rust in these and it can cause your clutch to hang up. So always clean these off, make sure they're clean, reasonably clean, before you put it back together. Put your throwout bearing back in. Put the screws back in it, you're good to go. Slip block from BK Racing, bkracing.com. This video will be on Whiteside's Workshop. This video will be on YouTube at Whiteside's Workshop on YouTube. Also will be tagged on the Cobalt Crew page on Facebook. Cobalt Crew Racing page group that's on Facebook. Contact me through that, or Don Whiteside on Facebook for any parts you need. Thank you. And we'll see you next time on Whiteside's Workshop.